Hello and welcome to Political Thinking. My guest this week has spoken movingly about caring for his very disabled son John, and before that for his mother who died of cancer when he was just 15 years old. Caring, says Sir Ed Davey, is the key to understanding who he is and what he believes. As leader of the Liberal Democrats, he rescued his party from the hammering it took after sharing power with the Conservatives, taking them in one election from just 11 MPs to 72. But now he faces a major new challenge. New parties and new leaders who've gone from opinion polling zeros to heroes in a matter of months. And I'm not just talking of Nigel Farage's reform. Zach Polanski's Greens are now breathing down the Liberal Democrats' necks. So Ed, welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be here.
It's actually the third time that you've been on this podcast, 6 years since we first spoke back in 2019. And I asked you then something I want to ask you again. What do you say to people who predict the death of this idea you believe in, the death of liberalism?
I think they're wrong. I think liberalism is alive and kicking. Sure, there are some new threats to it, and I'm sure we'll talk about that. And we know about Donald Trump in the US and Nigel Farage here, and other threats to liberalism are available. However, there are lots of them. But when I look around the world, and indeed our own country, I see many people who share our values and share our beliefs. You know, you could look at Mark Carney in Canada, who ran against Trump and did an incredible job for the Liberal Party in Canada. We've just seen the elections in Netherlands where the socially liberal party D66 came out top. And I think in our country, not only did we get our best result for over 100 years at the general election last year, I think if you look at lots of other evidence, I think we are going to be yet again the surprises of British politics.
Yeah, just to stress, it was the best result in terms of the number of MPs, not in terms of the size of the vote. What you said back in 2019, and I wonder if you could say it again now, I doubt it. You said, I still believe that liberalism speaks to the vast majority of people. I think it's the natural place for human beings.
Well, I still think it's shared by a significant majority. You're right to say that some of these far-right parties have increased the support. I mean, that's self-evident. All I would say is when I talk to some reform-minded people in terms of thinking of voting for Nigel Farage's party, and you put some counter-arguments, many of them can be swayed. So there are some who take that more extreme view of Nigel Farage, but there are others who are just actually pretty angry with the state of the world, with the things like the cost of living. They think things aren't working as they expected, their lives haven't improved. And I think Liberals can talk to those people as well as anybody.
Are we just seeing the end, the death of the old political system? Is that?
Well, I think that there's something in that. There's a more multi-party system than we've been used to, and people are uncertain about where they're going. And most of the voters that are being lost by the Labour Party and the Conservative Party. We've gained a few, other parties have gained some. And in one way, I actually welcome a new multi-party system. It backs up what Liberal Democrats have said for a long time, that first past the post as an electoral system does not represent the British people and doesn't give voice to their values and their concerns and their priorities. So you'll be really shocked to know, Nick, that I'm still in favour of electoral reform and proportional representation. Indeed, I go so far as to say that I'm prepared to work with the government if they wake up. They got this loveless landslide. They don't require a relatively small share of the vote with this huge majority they've got. So maybe they think they've got a vested interest. But are they also looking at the polls you're talking about, which show Nigel Farage in some polls winning a majority on a very relatively small share of the vote? And I would hope that would make them think again about the wisdom of first past the post.
So your warning to the Labour Party is that Nigel Farage really could be Prime Minister, is it, under this electoral system?
You were talking about the polls, and I'm reflecting on them as well.
But you think he could? He could move into Downing Street?
There is a potential, and on a really small share of the vote. And I would hope that will worry people. Some people who disagree with me on electoral reform, bear in mind it actually is Labour's party policy for PR. It passed at their conference. But those in Labour Party and others who disagree, often they've made the argument that that would give votes to the hard right. Well, I'm afraid they need to look at the evidence now. And first past the post doesn't just give votes to the hard right, but it would enable them to get to have the keys into 10 Downing Street. And I think
had that conversation yet with the Prime Minister?
No, I haven't. I'm afraid, besides PMQs and on Remembrance Sunday, I didn't have that many chats with him. However, he can read the runes, just like I can, and many other people who believe in reforming our democracy to make it more democratic and more accountable to people. I think there is time for change.
You're a bit obsessed with Farage, aren't you?
No, I'm not.
How many times did you mention him in your conference speech?
Well, he's leading the polls, as you say, but more importantly...
31 times in your conference speech, and none for Keir Starmer, and just one for Kemi Badenoch.
Well, as you say, he's leading the polls, and here's the reason why I think it's right that people like me talk about him. First of all, I think he's a real threat to our democracy in our country. The sort of authoritarian, divisive politics that he represents, I think is actually goes against British values, and he has to be called out. And I don't think other party leaders have called him out properly. And here's the second reason. I actually think we have a huge opportunity in the Liberal Democrats. I think we can be the party that stops reform getting into power.
You, in a sense, had this amazing, privileged start after the election. You had 72 MPs. You were the third largest party in the UK. You could easily dismiss, as you used to, Nigel Farage as a man with only 4. He's now got 5 MPs. And say that he had hardly any votes. You can't do that anymore because, in a sense, he's making a lot more noise. He's making much more of the argument than you. And I was thinking this weekend, as I saw the trailer for the new David Attenborough series, Kingdom, I don't know if you like wildlife series, that your 72 MPs are a bit like those kind of zebras you see grazing quietly across the African veldt. And Nigel Farage has got kind of 5 hyenas, and we kind of know who's going to win in that contest, don't we?
No, well, I think there's a lot more zebras than hyenas, and I think we will grow and grow. But let me answer you directly. I think we have been making noise on the issues that matter to people. So health and social care and carers, which we'll no doubt come to. We're the only party raising that issue. In fact, Nigel Farage has almost nothing to say. I don't think he's actually mentioned the words NHS in the House of Commons. We're the ones talking about the issue which matters to millions of people. We're the party who've raised the issue around Trump and the damage that he's doing to our country, on the economy and on defence. Nigel Farage is his best buddy. So we've been making an argument which I think appeals to the vast majority, to go back to that term, of British people who, and even reform voters who don't like Donald Trump. We've been the party saying that. On Europe, on the economy, we've been the party talking about getting rid of the awful Brexit trade deal that the Tories did, supported by Nigel Farage, to get a better one for our economy.
Well, you've talked about the things you've achieved with your 72 MPs, and I think in many ways your greatest achievement of this year, looking in, is probably something different. It is breaking the taboo, as you called it, the taboo about talking about caring for someone who's very disabled. You produced a party election broadcast in which your son John was featured. Mm-hmm. You produced a book talking about that. How important is it for you personally, as a dad, as a husband as well, to be able to share that thing that, as you and I have discussed a couple of times on this podcast, has completely transformed your life?
Well, caring has been part of my life almost since I was a kid, and I was a young carer of my mum, as you said earlier. If I'm honest with you, Nick, and we may have talked about this previously, I never used to talk about being a carer. But when you become party leader, people like you start asking you questions about, where you've come from and what's shaped you. And so I've been very frank about what shaped me. And what's interesting, when I've done interviews, and whether in your programme or for a newspaper, the response we've had from people has been quite dramatic, actually. My inbox has been full of people saying, thank you for talking about this. I've had that same life experience. And so that has emboldened me, talking to my wife, Emily, to talk more about being a carer. So I've been on a bit of a journey, to be honest.
Yeah. John's how old now?
He's 18 later this month.
Yeah, and he couldn't walk and he couldn't talk, but you talked very movingly a couple of years ago about the moment he did say that key word.
Yeah, well, he said daddy when he was about 8, and that was an amazing moment for me and family. He actually said mummy a lot earlier, I have to be honest.
And have there been other moments since?
Oh, yeah, no, he now talks quite a bit. I mean, sometimes it doesn't make much sense, so he likes doing lion impressions and talking about bears and who need to eat their porridge and all those sort of things. But sometimes he's very lucid and really clear about what he wants. When we were on holiday and he was having a swim in a river which was very cold, he made it clear that he wanted to come out because he was cold. And in the morning, sometimes he'll tell me to get up or hurry up or get off the toilet.
Yeah, he tells you.
Yeah, he tells me.
But you also have to cope, as your wife does, with the knowledge that she has MS.
Yeah.
This is extraordinary. I think the word burden isn't an unreasonable one, but it's a hell of a lot to carry at the same time as leading a political party and clearly dreaming of getting back into government. You were Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change under David Cameron. I suspect you'd like a job under the next government too.
Well, I'd like to be in the next government and leading the next government. Of course I would be. That's why you go into politics. But listen, my home life, of course, there are challenges. Of course there are. But fundamentally, it's the support of Emily that gets me through, right? So she has challenges, you're right, she has MS, and it's challenging for her. But we met in the party. I don't know if you've heard, but we met on a Liberal Democrat housing policy working group. Romance is not dead in the Davey household. And my amazing wife is a councillor, and she is on the housing portfolio for Kingston Council, and she's overseeing the largest council house building programme for over 40 years. So you can see that our connection, she's determined to play her role, despite everything, in local politics.
When we spoke on the Today programme after you decided to boycott the dinner with Donald Trump on that state visit of the US president, you talked about how you had prayed long and hard. That's another taboo in British politics, isn't it? Generally, that people don't talk about faith, don't do God, as Alistair Campbell once famously put it. But you spoke about it. And it made me wonder if there are other things in your leadership, in politics, that you pray about.
That's an interesting question. I mean, first of all, Christianity has been part of my life. I grew up going to church. My brothers and I were in the local church choir in Nottingham, St John's Carrington. And although I have to say my mother's illness and the loss of my mum tested my faith, it's always been there.
But faith, it still has an impact on your life, does it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't think Emily would have married me if I wasn't a Christian. She reads her Bible every night and we go to church. Not every Sunday. Life is just too hectic, I'm afraid. But it's an important part of our life, yeah. And does it affect my politics? Well, it must do. But I'm a member of the Church of England. I go to a very liberal church. My faith and politics work very, very well together.
It's funny because there was a moment during your conference speech where you clearly wanted to celebrate Britain as it is and to try to say that patriotism doesn't belong only to people on the right of politics. Was there a self-conscious echoing of that Hugh Grant Love Actually scene in the movie? We may be a small country, but we're a great one too. The country of Shakespeare, Churchill, the Beatles, David Beckham's right foot.
Yeah, it's great.
David Beckham's left foot. But now we'd, of course, have to say
Sir David, of course. Was there an echo? Well, I have to say what I liked about Love Actually is where he stood up to the American president. And that great scene where they had that press conference where, everyone expected the Prime Minister to sort of genuflect before the American president, and he didn't. And that was sort of shocked the room. Well, I'd like a bit more of that. I'd like more toughness and robustness in our political leaders. And I'm really proud that it's been the Liberal Democrats actually calling out Donald Trump. And calling out...
But you're the one who ends up without a deal if you do that, aren't you? I mean, you praised Mark Carney earlier. That, yes, he stood up to Donald Trump, but does Canada have a trade deal? No. Keir Starmer, you can say, genuflected your word, has said what Trump wants to hear, has got a trade deal.
Yeah, but it's not that good a deal, is it? No one thinks that. The truth is, the way you stand up to someone like Donald Trump is showing you have alternatives. I've talked about the coalition of the willing on the economy. So looking for free trade agreements, obviously with our European neighbours, and one of the reasons why you will not be surprised the Liberal Democrats believe we should have a new trade deal, a new UK-EU customs union. But I've talked about working with our Commonwealth partners, where Canada, Australia or India. I've talked about working in the Far East with countries like Japan and Korea. And if you go into a negotiating room with Donald Trump or anyone else, and they know that you are willing to walk away and that you have alternatives, you're stronger. And what I fear about the government, I certainly think Kemi Badenoch will be hopeless, Nigel Farage even worse, in negotiating for British interests. They have no alternative. And I'm really proud that we are a party showing that you can have alternatives.
It's fascinating to hear you talk about it because I can feel your passion about it. What's interesting is now, because you have so many more MPs, you get the chance at Prime Minister's Questions to ask, 2 questions a week. You've talked about that. You've talked about the EU customs union. You've talked about Trump and tariffs, an awful lot. What's quite interesting is what you don't talk about. How many times do you think you've asked the Prime Minister a question about migration, legal or illegal?
Or once or twice, I think.
One mention of small boats, that's it. None on legal migration at all. Doesn't that just prove you're not really bothered about the thing that, according to opinion polls, most people are bothered about?
No, we've got some really detailed policies about how we tackle it. And at our party conference, one of our big announcements was how we wanted to close down the asylum hotels by having what we called Nightingale processing centres, taking over the idea that we had during the pandemic.
But it's about what stirs you, isn't it? What moves you. And if you don't use a platform that you've got to talk about a subject, the suspicion is either you don't care about it or you know that your activists who write policy with the Liberal Democrats are much, much more liberal in their attitude to migration, much more sympathetic to large numbers of people coming to this country than actually the voters that you've got to win over.
Well, I've said publicly that I think the Conservatives trashed our immigration system. And one of the many mistakes the last Conservative government did is after Brexit, and let's remember they'd fought that on a promise that immigration would go down, immigration soared.
So you want many fewer people to come?
What I'm saying is that immigration dedefinitely was too high.
And is too high now?
It is, yes, it is.
And you want to deport people who don't meet the asylum rules?
Absolutely. So I'm really pleased you allowed me to clear that up because there's no doubt about that. I've said it publicly on a number of occasions. So one of the thinking behind our proposal to speed up the processing of asylum applications so we can close down the hotels is those people who have a right to be here, they can get on and work and contribute and start paying into the system. And those people who have no right to be here should be deported.
Let's talk about another policy, which I was somewhat surprised when we analysed what you'd asked at Prime Minister's Questions you don't ask about. Now, you often raise, as I've said, the customs union. You often talk about what you think is a bad deal with tariffs. I looked at all these questions. I thought he must have said something about this massive problem we've got with the deficit and debt. There must be some proposal to deal with our economic crisis at the moment. I couldn't find it, I confess. What would you do? Rachel Reeves has now effectively told us that as Chancellor in 3 weeks' time she'll put our taxes up. Well, would you?
Well, I will answer that question and the whole question in full, but I'm going to push back on you about the Prime Minister's Questions because one of the reasons I've asked about a customs union and a trade deal is because that would grow our economy more. And I think it is better to grow your way out of a deficit, as we used to do, rather than tax your way out of a deficit.
Well, you also had austerity, which you imposed when you were a minister under a Conservative-led government.
Well, we also managed to get huge amounts of investment, and I'm really proud that the Liberal Democrats were in those departments that saw the more investment than any other department.
But I hear your point. It's a perfectly fair one that you can grow your way out. There are different ways of doing it, and you've highlighted the way to do that. But there's a short-term problem now, isn't there? That's what the Chancellor was telling us, is, we, Labour, she says, wanted to grow the economy. She'd probably be sympathetic with some of the things
but they didn't do it, did they?
No, but nevertheless, you can both agree, can't you, that it's not going to solve the problem now. It's not going to solve the problem. So do you accept there has to be pain with no gain? In other words, at the last election, you Liberal Democrats came up with a whole host of ways to increase taxes. But having said this, you tax the banks, for example. You then said, we'll spend all that money. You wouldn't be able to spend any of it, would you? It would all have to go to actually filling the black hole in the nation's finances?
Well, I can look back at the election, what we said, and by this time we would have had a much better deal with Europe, would be growing the economy, and I think our tax policies that we put to the electorate would be able to make those spending commitments that we promised. You are right to say we're not in government. I'm afraid this current Labour government made so many mistakes. They failed to grow the economy, and so we're in a much bigger mess than we were previously. So I completely agree on that.
So if you were Chancellor now?
And so we're looking at a whole range of different things. For example, and I think I've talked to you about this before, we need to cut back on welfare. The question is, how do you do it? So I would argue you need to reinstate those face-to-face assessments that we used to have before the Conservatives got rid of them, because since we've had those, and originally they were brought in for the pandemic and that was reasonable, but they kept them. And we've seen a massive explosion of people getting things like the personal independence payment who probably may not need it. But you're also right that we're going to have some taxes go up. We've been very clear about that. You talk about the tax on the banks. We've reframed our proposal on that, and we said at our conference that there should be a windfall tax on the banks who are making huge profits with the way that the Bank of England is operating monetary policy.
But that money raised from higher taxes would simply go to pay the deficit. You couldn't get anything back for it. You couldn't say, "Oh, we'll put your taxes up here and we'll give you something else there."
Well, this is a mixed programme. I mean, these things that use things like it's a one here, one there. We have a programme of a range of things that we'd save some money on or we'd spend better. Let me give another example.
I'd rather you didn't give me another. I just want to know in principle, do Liberal Democrats under Sir Ed Davey accept there's got to be a whopping great tax rise in order to make the sums add up? Do you accept that?
No. We use the word whopping great tax rise as if I'm going to sign up to anything. No, I've been clear that we should first of all grow the economy with a proper growth strategy. They haven't got one, and there's some room for saving, and there's some room for some taxes.
Got it.
Right?
Not whopping. That's a journalistic word. We'll leave whopping to one side. A couple of other quick ones before we talk about you personally one more time. The Prime Minister's in Brazil for what's called COP, the Conference of the Parties, something you know very well. You were Climate Change Secretary, for 3 years or so?
I went to 3 of them,
Something's gone wrong in the argument about climate change, hasn't it? It feels like it's going away from you. You were so proud last time you came on this podcast talking about what you'd done about increasing renewable energy. Do you accept, in the round, something's gone wrong with this argument for your side, and you've got to do something about it?
I think it's fair to say that there's been a lot of myths out there that trying to undermine the case for investment in renewables, which, by the way, are the cheapest and most popular form of electricity. And I do think, and I will accept this, Nick, that people like me and the Liberal Democrats who believe in taking action on climate, we've got to redouble ourselves and win that argument back again. I made a speech before the summer recess saying that we have an ambition to halve people's energy bills over the next decade. And the only way you'll do that is through investing in renewables and investing in energy efficiency.
Do you like Keir Starmer?
I don't really know him. He seems a man there's a decent man. I think he's made a lot of mistakes as Prime Minister.
Would you serve under him?
I am trying.
Prime Minister.
I am the leader of the Liberal Democrats, and I want the Liberal Democrats to be the party of government. And what I want to do.
But you know, and I know that if the right is to be stopped, and you want the right to be stopped, probably the left has to come together. And that's the logic of calling for electoral reform, because if there were electoral reform, there's no way you will be Prime Minister after the next election.
I've been in the party a long time and served under a lot of leaders, and I've noticed in my predecessors that they have spent a lot of time trying to think about what happens after election, and that's probably taken their eye off the ball about focusing how to win more seats. And I said in the last Parliament for the last election I wasn't going to do that, and I'm pretty proud that we got 72 seats, our best result since 1923.
Now, quite a big moment in your life is coming up. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I'm not sure I do. My 60th birthday, is that the one?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a big moment for many people. Turning 60, is it a big moment for you?
Well, I haven't seen it in that light. I'm seen as an excuse to have a party.
Oh, what sort of party will you have?
Well, several probably.
Yeah.
With my family, with my friends, my colleagues.
I ask you about it because you have served in Parliament longer than any other party leader at the moment. And there may be people who say, good old Sir Ed, he's rescued the Liberal Democrats. Thanks very much. Time for younger leadership. Haven't they got a point when they look at the fact that Zach Polanski of the Greens, a totally unknown figure, is now 1-2 points behind you in the polls? Well, people want a younger leader, maybe. Bit more energy.
Well, I don't think
more modern.
I don't think that's what Liberal Democrat supporters want. But let me take the point about Mr. Polanski. Listen, he's got a great social media game. Let me give him that credit. And I think when you look at some of the people who are doing well in the polls, not just this country but elsewhere, it's really interesting how their use of social media. We're really looking at that. I've got a bit of a TikTok game going on myself, but I'm sure it can be improved. I like it when people underestimate me. Because they've done that quite a lot. And when I was being interviewed by people like you for the last election, I think if I had said we're going to win 72 seats, you'd have said, I think he's lost the plot. But we won 72 seats.
Fair point.
And what I'm saying to you now is if I look at the local election results around the country, we are the ones winning. And I'm increasingly confident we are going to be the surprise in a very good way at the next election. We've got some fantastic colleagues. I'm so proud of the Liberal Democrat MPs elected. And the case we're making, whether it's on the economy, on the health service, whether it's making foreign policy or defence, the case we're making, I think, is much more in tune with British values than any party out there. And that's why we're seeing lifelong Conservatives switch to the Liberal Democrats. So I am very optimistic about our chances.
How radical are you willing to be? You were highly critical of Prince Andrew. The King has now moved against Andrew, as he is now known.
Not because of what I said, I don't think.
But do you think that's it? Or do you think there's a role for politicians now to say, let's continue to pursue Andrew's finances? What happened in that case that's so controversial in terms of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein? Let's even examine the much broader question of the relationship between democratic politicians, electors, and the royal family. Do you want to keep going on that?
I am a strong supporter of the royal family and the monarchy. I think our constitutional monarchy is a real bedrock of our democracy. I'm hugely supportive of that. I think the King's doing a fantastic job. Prince Andrew, or former Prince Andrew, I think is a different issue, as the King himself has made clear. You mentioned two things. First of all, his finances. Where he's getting money from the taxpayer, whether it's through the Crown Estate or elsewhere, clearly that is an issue for MPs and for the Public Accounts Committee, and they should go after that. That's what the taxpayers would expect us to do. And then you mention the issue with Epstein. That was horrific for so many young women. And I think whether it's former Prince Andrew or indeed the President of the United States, men who've abused their power and traumatised young women should be held to account.
Including, though he denies all the allegations, Andrew.
Well, listen, there needs to be proper process. Of course there needs to be a proper process, but one suspects that he and others need to be held to account.
Sir Ed Davey, thanks for joining me on Political Thinking.